Hello, everybody. Welcome into a new edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the Patriots Press Pass and CLNSmedia.com network. I am Evan Lazar, joined as always by 98.5's Alex Barth. And Alex, our tee up for the show today, we're going to discuss and dissect and break down all of the individual plays and all of the little minutiae as we always do here on Patriots Beat. But the bird's eye view, the big picture topic coming into this that we wanted to hit on was the frustrating part from Sunday's loss to the Miami Dolphins is that this felt a lot like last year's team, right? You outgained them, you out time of possession them, you're better on third downs. The Patriots almost gained 400 yards of offense in this game and somehow only put up 16 points, and they lose because they shot themselves in the foot. Fumbles, penalties, some poor situational play calling, I thought, on the offensive side of the football for Josh McDaniels. That all felt like the 2020 Patriots, right? But then when you take a step back and you kind of, go about it and take your emotions out of it, right, for a second, and take the pain and the loss out of it for a second, you look at this and you come away, especially when you watch the tape and you say, wow, there was a lot of really good things and a lot of really good starting points for this Patriots team to hang their hat on moving forward, and none bigger, of course, than rookie quarterback Mac Jones.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't entirely agree with the fact that it felt like last year. And I think, and you sort of alluded it to there when you said the bird's eye view, but I think the big element is last year, it was what it was. Worst thing you could be, I guess I have to update this take now, but the worst thing you could be last year in the NFL is a 7-9 team with no direction.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what the Patriots were. It's literally what they were. 7-9, no direction. This year, you're building to something, and we now know, okay, Mac Jones is a player. This kid fits in the NFL. I thought there were some other players that either rookies who we now know they fit in the NFL, or just new acquisitions that it's like, okay, they can produce in this system. I will get into some of these other names, but I thought Christian Barmore had an outstanding game, even though he wasn't near the ball a ton. He impacted the game. Both tight ends, Matt Judon, guys who we now see it. There it is on tape. Regular season, boom, they fit, the pieces are there. So that's encouraging. To me, what this game reminded me of is, flip the roles. This is how the Patriots won games for years, where there would be, not every game they won, but 2 or 3 times a year, they would get outplayed by some young upstart team. But, that team was young. They're maybe undisciplined. They'd make a couple stupid mistakes, whether it was turnovers or penalties, and the Patriots would end up winning the game. They won that way for a long time because they were the more veteran, experienced team with a core. The Patriots were on the other side of that on Sunday, and that's going to happen. It's going to happen with the young team. You thought it was going to be the quarterback, not everybody else letting the quarterback down. But, that's kind of, 4-year window, year one, game one. They didn't spend $350 million in the offseason and draft a quarterback in the first round to say, all right, we beat the Miami Dolphins week 1. We're done here. Call it a day. The project was successful.
Right.
That's not what this was. So it's frustrating for sure, especially it being a division win. But I think there's a lot to be encouraged by when you go back and watch that game.
Right. And you just hit the nail on the head. People overreacting to week 1, game number 1 of the Mac Jones era, can get the hell out of here with that. Right. Like, this is
you can react to it, but you can't act like the result.
Right. Judging the team based off of what happened Sunday and the result of the game on Sunday, I think is being short-sighted. Right. That's basically what I'm saying.
This year, in some ways, and I'm going to get a ton of heat for saying this because people are going to misunderstand what I'm saying, but Evan, you'll understand it. And the smart people watching will understand it. This year is almost in some ways just one big preseason.
Yeah.
For Mac Jones and the offense.
Well, he played a lot better than the quarterback in his first preseason. So let's get, or first season in general. Let's get to some of the Mac stuff. I do have a play that I want to pull up here in a few minutes, but we can talk about it first and just discuss, first and foremost, the word poise comes to mind with this performance. And I think that's really important when you go ahead and you watch to all these other rookie quarterbacks, even guys like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, that played in week 1 and played significant snaps. You look at Mac Jones's poise in the pocket, the fact that the game did not look too big for him at any point. Maybe early on, it felt like he was easing his way into it a little bit and had some nerves. But once he settled down, there was no you didn't see anything phase him. Right, there was no real panic in Mac Jones's game. He then also stood in there
outside of the first drop back.
Yeah, no, I know. Like I said, first quarter or so, I thought.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was a little bit shaky and kind of needed to. He had some nerves, right? Which is what you would expect for a rookie making his first career start in the NFL. But then you get into the second and third quarter, and it really started to turn on for Mac Jones, and he looked like the player that we have been touting and hyping up in the preseason and in training camp. And David Andrews talked about it. The Patriots coaches talked about it today. The toughness to stand in there and take 9 quarterback hits and just keep getting up and keep making throws, staring down the barrel, knowing the bullet's coming right at you, and being able to stand in there. That's not most rookie quarterbacks. You get hit a couple times, especially in your first career start. You start to get rattled. Right. And you start to fade on your throws, or you start to get the ball out early or panic in the pocket. There was 0 signs of panic from Mac Jones. And there was also a whole lot of really smart cerebral processing type of plays, both pre and post snap, that were extremely impressive as well.
Yeah, again, a lot of, and I'll kind of take my lumps on this. I said I'd like to see him sit back and kind of learn some of this stuff from the backseat behind Cam Newton for the first couple of weeks, and he didn't need that. He is, as advertised, the most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft. I've been putting a Trevor Lawrence kind of disclaimer on that take. It might not need to.
Yeah,
Lawrence threw 3 picks against a bad football team, a bad Houston Texans football team. So, again, with Mac Jones, if he's going to give you this, and the reason why I'm saying, losing to by the way, decent Miami Dolphins team, I think that's a decent team, especially defensively.
Yeah, defensively for sure.
The reason why, you say, okay, well, losing that team is sort of okay, because again, it's this 4-year window that they're in. They're in a 4-year window to win a title. It'd be great if they won 1 year one, but that's not how it's built. That's not how things are done in the NFL. The Patriots have just been in this other category for so long. What he showed us on Sunday is that they don't need to start over, right? Because if the quarterback can't play, if you draft the quarterback and you realize he can't play, I don't know how many times the Bears have reset their 4-year window, right? Or the Browns have reset their 4-year window. What Mac Jones showed us, all right, this is a guy who conceivably, like, all right, you have the quarterback. Let's get this rolling. Let's go. So that's sort of where that comes from. And again, some of that mental stuff, that's normally what clicks later. And there's still some stuff that needs to click for Mac Jones, but that's normally some of the last stuff to click. And he clearly had that on Sunday, and against a complicated defense.
Right. I think that is the thing that stood out the most was Brian Flores sent 21 blitzes at Mac Jones in this game. Mac Jones dropped back to pass 40 times, and Brian Flores blitzed him on 21 of them, right? So 21 blitzes at a rookie quarterback, and he handled all of it pretty well. Under pressure, Mac Jones's passer rating was 102.7. In his first career start against a very complex defense that was trying to tee off on him, he had a passer rating while under pressure of 102.7. If the Patriots get that level of quarterback play from Mac Jones, and I don't think it's that outlandish to think that he can string those types of consistent games together, because it wasn't like he went out there and threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? I mean, this was a pretty mediocre, you look at the stat line, and he had I think it was like 281 in a touchdown. I mean, it's a good stat line, but it's not a fantastic one, right? So to think that he can keep replicating that, I think is easily doable. And I want to pull up this play here from the second half against the Miami Dolphins, obviously. And I want you to look at, first and foremost, this pre-snap look that Mac Jones has here. So I'll roll the play a little bit more. So on the trip side of this formation, on the left side, Alex, this is a cover 1 look, right? All these corners over here on the trip side, they are all lined up over their receivers here, right? Man-to-man here, man-to-man there, man-to-man, and you have man-to-man here on the backside. This safety is creeping into the box and sort of in the middle of the field. And by this look, with the single high safety up top and man-to-man across the board, you have some sort of one robber or one cut type of coverage where if they run that crossing route from the trip side, this safety is going to cut it off, right? That's the look that he's getting pre-snap. Now let's watch what happens when we roll this play and what this Dolphins defense ends up doing post-snap. So as we roll the play, the Dolphins are going to fall into cover 2. All right, so here we go pre-snap. We're seeing cover one, right? Now all of a sudden they drop, and now they have two split safeties. They got these corners falling underneath, and it's a 4 under 2 deep coverage, right? Totally different from what he was thinking that he was going to get pre-snap. So he's going to come over here and work this route combination. And Kendrick Bourne's route here is really important. He is running what the Patriots call a branch route. So what he's going to do is he's just going to sit this route down off of these two players underneath this defense right there, right? This outside corner and this hook seam defender there. He's also got this vertical route on the sideline by Nelson Aguilar. He knows that Nelson Aguilar is going to be in this cover 2 hole, right? We talk about the honey hole. I think John Gruden likes to call it the turkey hole, right? That's the hole right here in this cover 2 coverage. So what Mac does in the pocket next is also really important and pretty awesome. So if you watch Mac go in the pocket, he's going to open his shoulders and pump fake to Kendrick Bourne's route. So watch him open his shoulders and see that little shoulder fake, and watch what it does to this corner at the bottom of the screen. When he sees that pump fake, like he's going to throw here to Kendrick Bourne, Mac gets that corner to fall off of Nelson Aguilar's route. You see the corner leaves him right there at the top of this route. And then he's going to go ahead, and not only is he going to throw this ball while getting hit in the pocket, staring down that chamber again, he's going to throw a back shoulder and away from the half field safety to protect Kendrick Bourne from the incoming safety. So these are the types of throws that this is not dink and dunk, right? This is a 25 yard dart from the far hash. He's on the far hash. Right. So he's throwing this across the entire field on a dime, and he's putting it in the perfect situation too. So this is the type of quarterbacking play that you see. Post-snap coverage rotation read, being able to manipulate the coverage and get that outside corner to fall off of Nelson Aguilar and jump that Kendrick Bourne route, and then making the throw in the right spot. Mac Jones made 5 to 6 of these plays that I broke down in my film review today, where you just look at it and you are just like, my goodness, right? Like, this guy is in his first career start, and he's making all of these kinds of adjustments on the fly, reads on the fly, post-snap coverage rotation reads, throwing the football accurately in good places for the receiver, right? We're not throwing it in the middle of the field towards the half field safety. We're throwing it back shoulder to protect the receiver from the oncoming hit. That play right there to me that's a veteran elite level quarterback play. PFF gave him a big time throw for it. That is one of those throws that you expect from the great quarterbacks around the league to make. And Mac Jones is making it week 1, day 1 against a really good Miami Dolphins defense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you just broke it down there. Again, there's levels to what he was doing. It wasn't, basic vanilla. We'll talk about kind of how they managed to the playbook and Josh McDaniels play calling. I'm sure you want to get into that. But in terms of, I don't necessarily think, how do I phrase this? I don't think they took anything out from the beginning and just said, on Wednesday or Thursday, hey, we're not going to run this because Mac can't. I think everything was available for him. And they trusted him to run everything. Now, situationally, on a play-to-play basis, I'll let you get into that because I know you're kind of hot about that, but it didn't feel like they had to hold the offense back as a whole for him.
Right. And I think the main thing that I wanted to show in that play in particular, because I almost pulled up the seam splitter to Nelson Aguilar early in the game because that throw was really good pre-snap read, right? He understood what he was getting pre-snap with the 2 high safeties, slid to protection, made sure he picked up the blitz on the left side and darted the ball in the middle of the field. Really good throw, really good process pre-snap. But what I liked so much about that play was it's all post-snap, right? It's one thing to be able to make the first read, right? And when you get a stagnant defense and you see too high and you get too high post snap and you make the seam splitter throw, that's all well and good. But when you can react on the fly to post snap rotations and know where you're going with the football and then have the wherewithal to give that little shoulder pump fake, right, to pull the corner off of the vertical route on the outside and make these little just detailed minutia plays from the pocket, that's when people say, Tom Brady doesn't have the biggest arm, he doesn't have the most legs, he's not the most mobile guy, what makes him so great? For 20 years, those are the things that Tom Brady would do, right? And Mac Jones is showing those types of things. He's not Tom Brady. We're not saying he's going to be Tom Brady, but he's showing those types of things day 1. And that's really, really impressive. Now, you talk about the playbook, and I went back and finally have been able to watch the coach's film here this afternoon. And I do want to credit the Dolphins defense. I thought that they took away most of the big plays that the Patriots did try to dial up down the field to Nelson Aguilar. In particular, they also had one play that I'm sure Mac will see in the film room and want back, where he had
the Hunter Henry one.
No, it had Jonnu Smith on a corner route off of play action that he came off of and checked it down early, but he easily could have hit Jonnu for a big play. There was one that Hunter Henry did seem to get up the seam a little bit against a too high, that maybe he thought that the linebacker just didn't have a way to pull it out of that. But overall, I thought the Dolphins did a really good job of taking away the deep shots. And if the game plan going in is to avoid Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, can you really blame the Patriots for that game plan?
Right. That's the game plan, even with a veteran quarterback.
Right. So you go into this game and have Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers going up against a really, really good secondary and a bunch of guys that pick the ball off pretty easily, especially Xavier Howard, right? He leads the league in interceptions last year. Do you really want Mac Jones throwing at Xavier Howard 10 times in this game? No. So the game plan, for the most part, thought was pretty solid in terms of avoiding those guys. Where I had a problem with Josh McDaniels, and the biggest problem that I had with him was about 11 minutes to go in the game. It's 2nd and 7 from the Dolphins' 18-yard line inside the red zone. And they run that toss to Damian Harris. And Mac Jones has gone 8 for his last 10. He drives him right down the field. The play before that was or 2 plays before that, was the Jonnu Smith, where he threw him the other side of the linebacker, and Smith made a nice adjustment on it up the seam. He drives him down the field. And on 2nd and 7 from the 18, instead of taking a shot at the end zone and trying to get the go-ahead touchdown, they run that toss play, they gain 3 yards, and they get into a 3rd and 4. And then after that, they roll the pocket and they give them a one-read throw, right? They roll that pocket and they ran that flat concept that they ran a couple times to Jacoby Myers, which against man coverage, you get the pick. You understand that that's a decent call there, and it almost worked. It just was a little bit too far in front of Myers. But my overall point here is they had a really good chance to go ahead in that situation. And late in the game, when they ran the football with Damian Harris, I kind of understood that they were trying to milk the clock a little bit there and see if they could run the thing down. But once they got into that second to last drive was where I really had an issue with the ending play calling. You go run, 3rd down, roll out pass, where there's really only one read on the play for Mac Jones. Just ultra conservative once they got down there. I thought that they really could have afforded to take a shot at the end zone there.
Yeah, it would be nice. And I saw some people saying Mac didn't throw the ball in the end zone once, which is true. Yeah. There weren't a ton of routes run in the end zone. So it's not like he had a ton of opportunities to, right? The one play when they really get down there, he throws it short and they end up throwing a touchdown anyway. 6 points is 6 points. I don't really care where he throws the ball, right? So I think there's room to grow. But room to grow doesn't mean he was bad. And yeah, I think it's as much Josh. And I don't entirely fault them for being careful as a whole. Like you said, avoiding the Dolphins' great cornerbacks, that's just common sense. You're going to do that. But, it's more, and if that was the game plan that week, because it was week 1, and, you can't expect him to come out and look like that. Better safe than sorry, right? And maybe that's just what it was. And he looked better than they thought. And, good problem to have. You just hope that's not going to become a theme this year, where it looks like Mac can do more and they're just not giving him that opportunity. So we'll see what happens going forward. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I think they'll be fine, or, oh, I think they'll hold them back. Like, we don't know. Right. That's going on in that building, and they're having meetings about that today and tomorrow and yada, yada, yada. But, I'd like to think that that's something that was just a 1 week thing. It was all right. Good defense, first start. Good corners. Let's just be careful with him, and we'll open it up a little bit next week against the Jets, but we'll see when it comes to that, because it wouldn't be totally foreign for McDaniels to just come out and be totally conservative for no reason. Right.
So not to belabor the point, but I just want to take through the sequence again. So the 3rd and 7 play from the Miami 29 was the underneath throw to James White that gains 8 yards and moves the chains, right? The next play, 11:48 to go in the game. Patriots down 17-13 from the Miami 21. Mac has drove them down the field at this point with a couple of good throws on this drive. And they get into first and 10 from the Miami 21, 11:48 to go. Damian Harris up the middle for 3 yards. Damian Harris left end for 3 yards. Mac Jones incomplete in the flat to Jacoby Myers, right? Those were the 3 play calls from inside the Miami 25. Once they got all the way down there, down 17-13, and they end up kicking a field goal in that situation, and they don't allow Mac to ever attack the end zone. And this is a quarterback, and I get it. People are going to hear me say this, and they're going to say, oh, well, Evan, in college, he was throwing to Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. It's different, yada, yada, yada. But, Alex, this was a quarterback in college, and you watched a ton of Mac Jones, too. He was fantastic at taking shot plays from the high red zone to the end zone. Like, elite at that, right? Those 20 to 25 yard touchdown passes to Devontae Smith were automatic for Alabama. So giving him a chance to go and push the football, whether it's Johnny or Hunter Henry up the seam or Aguilar on a vertical or just something down towards the end zone, I think really that was when I felt like McDaniels got a little bit tight with the play calling. And I asked him today about Mac audibling out of run plays because there were a couple of times where they were in single high, and I thought he could have checked into a pass to be able to beat the defense better, and he tore up single high for the most part in this game. And the answer that I got from McDaniels sounded to me like they're trying to avoid at all costs having Mac audible into different plays at the line of scrimmage, right? McDaniel said, we try to avoid that. We try to call the plays and be good at calling plays at the right time and things like that. But maybe a couple of situations late in the game where if Mac had the full freedom of the offense at the line of scrimmage, he would see the single high safety, he would see man-to-man and say, let's spread this out and let's push the football down the field against this coverage.
And I mean, that's another one where, again, okay, so they didn't want him audibling. Is that a week one thing? Is that a year one thing?
Right.
And we'll have to see and find out, because you hope if he'd come out and thrown like 2 picks, you're like, all right, yeah, let's pump the brakes. But based on what he did, I think it's time to put a little bit more on his plate. I think that's totally fair.
That's what I'm saying, right? Is that if he had went out there and he had looked rattled and he had looked nervy and he had looked shaky in the pocket, and if he had thrown the ball around the yard all game and was flirting with an interception all game long, then I would totally understand being conservative, right? Totally. But then when you saw how well he played, it felt like the leash didn't need to be there. Right? It felt like they didn't need to pull back on him and they should have just let him go. What did you think about the new weapons? Look, the 12 personnel package didn't exactly come out like gangbusters. There was some flashes. Hunter Henry made a nice catch in the middle of the field for 16 yards. Nelson Aguilar had a nice game. Did you think that you saw enough from this new group of pass catchers to get excited, Alex?
Yeah, I did. And I know people I had in my mentions say, oh, I still don't have a number one receiver. It's also subject. Like, I'm sorry they don't have prime Randy Moss. That's really going to screw them. No team has ever won a Super Bowl without prime Randy Moss. All of the best receivers in history, whether it be Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, Terrell Owens, they all won Super Bowls. You need one of the no. I look, again, there's a lot to be encouraged about. I think that you see when they put the pieces together, right? And we talked about this a ton during camp. You see where everybody fits. When you go back, and it's easier to see on the coach's tape than it is watching on TV, or at least easier to see live when you can kind of see the whole field. You can see how Jonnu Smith is getting Jacoby Myers open, how Jonnu Smith is getting Jacoby Myers open, how Nelson Aguilar is getting Hunter Henry open, vice versa. James White, I thought, had a big game, and I've been saying he's a guy who's going to bounce back. You see all the pieces coming together. I honestly thought one of the most encouraging things from Mac Jones, we haven't talked about this, and it's Mac Jones and it's the offense as a whole as well. If you include, and it sucks, because Kendrick Bourne caught 3 passes, made 3 nice plays, ran 3 good routes, didn't show up in the stat sheet because all 3 got erased by penalty.
Yeah.
But if you include the Kendrick Bourne targets that aren't in the official box score, Mac threw passes to 9 different players and completed passes to 9 different players. They didn't, the Patriots offense didn't work that way last year, at least for most of the season. Early on, when Edelman was still healthy and they weren't totally banged up, they were spreading the ball out a bit. But by the end of the year, it was like 2 or 3 guys getting targets, right? So for them to spread the ball out like they did, again, 9 different receivers catching passes, the Patriots are at their best offensively when they can beat you with all 5 eligible receivers on the field and force that defense to thin itself out. And that's going to help a rookie quarterback too, because you can't disguise what you're doing as well. So that, it's a take about the receivers, it's a take about Mac Jones, however you want to categorize it. To me, that was one of the most encouraging things of the whole game.
Yeah, the spreading the football around was nice. The other sort of gripe I had with Josh McDaniels was I felt like there was more opportunities to hunt matchups in this game than what the Patriots ended up doing. They were able to get James White on that linebacker, Jerome Baker on the wheel route. That was a nice play. But Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, when you come out in 12 personnel and the defense is putting 3 linebackers on the field, they should be able to find a matchup with a receiver on a linebacker that they like at some point, right? Like they should be able to scheme that up. And the Miami Dolphins did it a couple of times with Dante Hightower and Juwan Bentley on Myles Gaskin, right? There should be an opportunity for those tight ends to get on a linebacker when they're matching 12 at a base defense. And note that kind of comes into the conversation I was just having about how much freedom Mac has, right? Because if Mac sees they're in base, even if they are playing too deep and it's not technically a loaded box, I would love to see them start condensed and then break it out once they see the personnel for the defense, because someone's getting a linebacker. Whether it's the back, whether it's one of the tight ends, somebody is going to get a linebacker in that matchup. So hopefully that's the next iteration of that package. And I think that's when this package will really, really open up. I thought overall, though, there's a lot of people, because of the drops, because of some of the injuries that they heard about over the summer, Nelson Aguilar had already gotten some people hot and bothered, right? Like it was, we were seeing it on our show. I'm sure other people were seeing it on other shows that Nelson Aguilar was already starting to catch some heat. He played very, very well in this game. He was where he would needed to be when he was supposed to be there. And that might have been more important than the field stretching ability that he did show. I broke down the play a couple minutes ago. Although it wasn't an 80-yard bomb, it was still a vertical route to Nelson Aguilar. And that's exactly what you want to see. The seam splitter was another vertical route where they got him in the number 2 position, were able to get him up the field between the safeties. So Nelson Aguilar played his role in that offense on Sunday. 5 catches, 72 yards, gave them some vertical ability down the field. Hopefully now that Hunter Henry is healthy and they get some more reps together in that 12 personnel package, that will start to open up, as well as Mac starting to open it up from a mental standpoint too, and being able to attack those matchups. I felt like we're only scratching the surface of what they're capable of in that 12 personnel package, and we didn't fully get all of the matchup nightmare type of situations that I think that this will eventually present to them.
You covered it very thoroughly. I want to make sure we keep moving because I want to see if we can take some questions. So if I had talked, I was just going to repeat what you said.
Fair enough. All right. One last thing here about the offensive side of the ball. I guess 2 things. One, panic level at all, if at all, with the offensive line play. Obviously, you give up 9 quarterback hits. The pressure was not good. Once Trent Brown drops out of the game, the running game wasn't as good at that point afterwards with Trent Brown leaving the game. So is it as simple as Trent Brown's injury is not that serious, so they plug him back in and it will be fine? Or are you at all concerned about the pass protection? Because I was a little bit wary of the pass protection coming into the year. They lose Joe Thuney, and you replace one of the best pass protecting guards in the NFL with a bulldozing guard in Michael Onwenu, right? Much different style of player. And they came out, and especially on that left side, picking up games or stunts, whatever you want to call them, was a problem, right? Isaiah Wynn and Michael Onwenu working together was a little bit of an issue, picking up those twists by Miami. And the right side, once Trent Brown went out, no push whatsoever on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think when you have, you talk about Onwenu and Wynn, I think they can, it's just getting used to it and working together. Wynn was probably a little shaky, more shaky than I'd like to see him. I'm willing to chalk it up to week 1. And, those two, Wynn had been working next to Joe Thuney for 2 years, 3 years, and they just had that chemistry. I think you need to work on that. On the other side, if you're going to be relying on Justin Herron and Yasir Durant and Yadni Kajus, that's a little concerning. If Trent Brown's not good to go, I'd like to see, and I think the reason they didn't do this against the Dolphins, I think you're the one who made this point to me, was that they didn't, maybe didn't practice for this, or they didn't want to move things around too much during the game. But, if they know Trent Brown can't go, I'd like to see them practice and then go out there. You put Ted Karras in at left guard, and then you move Mike Onwenu back out to right tackle. I think that could fix a lot of things. So, hopefully we see that. I think that's the way they get their 5 best healthy linemen on the field. Again, if Trent Brown can't go. And then even if Isaiah Wynn's shaky, I think that rearrangement where Karras comes in and plays guard, you move Trent Brown over to the left side and put Michael Onwenu in at right tackle, and take Wynn out of the lineup. Like, that needs to be on the table. Again, it's just 1 week, so I'm not saying they need to do any of that yet. Well, I would do it if Brown can't play, but
right.
I'm not. If we're still talking about this as an issue in October, then yeah, we need to start talking about changing that configuration of the offensive line. But for one game where they lost one of their key players, the other side of the line's working together for the first time, I'm willing to say, okay, let's give them a week or two to see what happens. It wasn't that bad where it's like, all right, this isn't going to work, rip it up.
Right. And you also, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but 21 blitzes by Miami. So Miami came after the quarter.
Tested.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Teams are going to see that, and the Patriots are probably going to get blitzed a good amount this year.
Yeah. So. Those twists, particularly up front, that what Miami was doing was they were blitzing the off-ball linebacker and then twisting with him, right? They got the penetration from the down guys, and then they twisted the linebacker around, and that gave the Patriots a lot of problems picking up that looper from the second level. And that's a pretty difficult thing to do, and that's something that you're going to have to work out in terms of communication and things like that with everybody involved, the center and the quarterback, obviously setting the protections, but also those guys working together in tandem post-snap reactions to those types of plays. So I definitely agree with you, though, on Wenu kicking back out to right tackle and Karras going in at guard. Karras was warming up on the sideline at one point, so I think
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so I think it was in consideration, but they just tried to. The Patriots love continuity. It's a Dante Scarnecchia thing. They would much rather plug in one player and go 1-for-1 than start jumbling up the entire thing, especially on game day.
And Bill Belichick's talked about that. He says, well, now you have two backups instead of one, because even if he starts at one position, he's the backup at the other. The other thing, maybe some of it is, and we know in the past, Bill Belichick's treated September like essentially an extension of the preseason. Yeah. They didn't get a look at Yasir Durant, obviously, in the preseason. He was in Kansas City. They just got him before roster cuts. So it could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as they wanted to see him. There was an opportunity to see him, and that's what they did. So
Yasir Durant was actually pretty solid in pass protection. He was clean. He didn't give up pressure, and his pass protection reps, it's just a clear, for anybody, there would be a drop off in people moving and displacing on the offensive line when you go to Trent Brown, to anybody else, really, right? No one else is going to move guys off the line of scrimmage in the run game like Trent Brown. So that's a big part of it. Really quickly, offense. Running backs, what are we thinking here? JJ Taylor, a healthy scratch. Ramondre Stevenson, are we ever going to see Ramondre Stevenson again? Are they going to give him a little bit of leeway here with the fumbles? He also got ran over by Landon Roberts and blitz pickup too. And not a good debut for Ramondre Stevenson. And it's way, way too early to say this, but I hope that the Patriots are not going to look back on this 2 months from now and say, why did we trade Sony Michel?
I said that at the time. They were putting a ton of faith in Ramondre. And look, he earned it. He played well in the preseason, but you gotta recover the ball. And somebody had the quote today, whether you think you fumbled or not, you should end every play handing the ball to the ref.
Right.
That's like one way or the other. So the
ball came out. The ball was live, and it gave the refs the opportunity to call it a fumble.
Exactly. Right? Was he down? Yeah, probably. He still got it. It's not even so much he fumbles it. He doesn't make an effort to go for the ball. And then the blitz pickup thing for me is huge. That's as big because he's got to make that block. If he's going to get playing time on offense, it's going to be in those in-between situations where it's run or pass, because that's where Rex Burkhead played last year. He's not there. Somebody needs to fill that role. In theory, Stevenson's the guy. If he can't pass block, it's not going to happen. So I think it's going to be a little bit until we see Ramondre Stevenson again. He didn't look ready. He didn't look ready for the NFL in that game.
Yeah, he had one carry, and then he had the one catch, and he fumbles, and he didn't play after that, I don't think.
He had the fumble.
I think he played, and then he got ran over by a Landon Roberts.
Right. I think they only put him in because it was the play Damian Harris got his helmet knocked off.
Right.
Got the stinger or whatever it was. I think he cut his lip. So they had to take him out for a play.
It's not that Sony Michel was some game-changing running back that the Patriots are missing, but he was a reliable running back.
He's a guy you can trust, right? He's a guy you can trust. You can put him on the field. You don't have to worry about it. We saw Brandon Bolden in that role late in the game, and I'm not totally opposed to that, but Sony Michel's a better running back than Brandon Bolden.
Yeah.
And you can't, I see people wanting to rip Damian Harris for the fumble. It's tough because they asked him to do a ton.
Yeah, that was my final point. I'm glad you brought that up because Harris ran the football 23 times, which isn't an exuberant number, right? It's not like it's a huge number, but he played a decent amount in this game, especially by Patriot running back standards. First game out, it was pretty hot out too, and it looked like towards the end of that game he was a little bit gassed, and then he fumbles, and that sort of in that situation at the end of the game there is Damian Harris fresher, and does that lead to him potentially not fumbling if somebody like Sony Michel is still here,
right?
And he's able to only carry the football 15 times instead of 23 times.
They didn't have anybody to spell him. That's what it comes down to. He played 53% of the snaps. Patriots, they've had players here and there do it, but in terms of a whole season, they haven't had a running back with an over 50% usage rate since LeGarrette Blount. They don't like doing that, and that's a big reason why they like keeping these guys fresh. You got to be able to, they need somebody who can spell Harris. I would think it's going to be JJ Taylor here, at least for the next couple of weeks. But it would have been Sony Michel if he was here.
That's the way. I don't, as much as you want to put this on Damian Harris in terms of just he has to hold on to the football. That's obvious, but there is a little bit of revisionist history going on here with the Sony Michel trade. If Damian Harris doesn't have to play that much in the game, how does that change things? And then they don't trust, clearly, they either don't trust him or don't have a role that they feel comfortable with JJ Taylor being a game day active, right? He's a healthy scratch.
Well, I would say, here's the thing. I would say the reason they don't have that role is because of Ramondre Stevenson. If they don't trust Ramondre Stevenson, it opens up a role for JJ Taylor.
Okay.
You just got to hope he's up to it when it comes to pass blocking.
I would, at this point, next week, I would not be surprised at all if JJ Taylor is the running back up and Ramondre Stevenson's the healthy scratch after what we saw on Sunday. You got to put the guy in there that you can trust. All right, let's move over to the other side of the football. A couple of things, key things to hit on here. We're going to get to some of the quick game RPO stuff here in a second, but I do want to make the point. Watching the coaches tape again, the traditional run game, traditional drop back passing game that Miami ran, the Patriots defense was really, really good against, right? They just turned it around and handed it off, or Tua just dropped back the pass. I would say even traditional play action, right? Not one that had an RPO element, but just traditional straight drop back play action. The Patriots were extremely good at that as well. So you saw this defense coming together in a way that when they got into that traditional stuff, really, really sound defensively, good coverage on the back end. The pass rush was married together. The run defense was solid. So the question is, are these other teams, because Miami ends up scoring 17 points. They only possessed the ball for 23 minutes. They're 4 for 11 on third down. You'll take that performance. I understand it was frustrating to watch some of the get easy throws that they gave up. And we're going to discuss how maybe they could potentially fix those easy throws. But all that aside, you have to take that performance from the defense on the whole, right? You expect to win a lot of games that you only give up 17 points.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was specific areas, I think, that they improved that they struggled with last year, mainly in the run game. And people are going to say, point to the first drive of each half. The scripted drives and the RPOs, I don't know what that was. That was a problem. The good news is the Dolphins are one of the more RPO-heavy teams in the league. They shouldn't see as many for the rest of the year. The bad news is teams are going to see that film and put more RPOs in. So you need to figure out how to defend them. But, I think it was 72 yards on 23 carries. It was 3.2 yards a carry.
Yeah.
After last year, and that's with some of those bad RPO ones. So against the traditional run, they're holding the Dolphins to under 3 yards a carry. You take that. That's a marked improvement. That's a great improvement. They got after the quarterback, whether it was Matt Judon, Josh Uche, Kyle Van Noy. They got there. The pass rushers got home. Also, Christian Barmore wasn't near the ball a ton, but he was impacting that pass rush. And they had him doubled. This is a guy playing in the first half of his first NFL game. And the Dolphins felt the need to double him on third down and leave Josh Uche one-on-one with their backup tackle, who he steamrolled. He went through Eichenberg on his sack, right? Yeah. So Barmore is going to be a factor. He's going to be a problem for other teams. He looked really good. And those are two big things they couldn't do last year. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't get to the quarterback. I thought ultimately, and there were individual pockets where they couldn't do it, and we'll talk about those, but big picture, they got to the quarterback. They stopped the run. That's really encouraging because that's what they spent all that money to do in the offseason was improve the front seven, and it looked vastly improved.
So the traditional stuff, they played very well on the whole. Good coverage on the back end, married at, like I said, with the front seven. And when they just tried to drop back and pass against the Patriots, and the stat that I threw out there was Tua in over 2.5 seconds versus under 2.5 seconds, right? Throw, that meaning time to throw, right? Time to release. When he released the football in under 2.5 seconds, he threw for over 10 yards per attempt. When he held the football for over 2.5 seconds, then threw, it was 3.7 yards per attempt, almost 7 yards per attempt difference between those quick game throws versus the throws where he actually had to drop back, read out a coverage, and make a throw down the field, right? So a significantly better product in those non-schemed quick game type of plays. With that being said, all of them count. Right. So it's great that they didn't give up a big play down the field, really, or all these types of things. But this RPO package and quick game stuff, we need to talk about it, because this was a concern from this game. And right, in some degree, and I've now watched Tua against the Patriots twice, right? He didn't play in the first game against them last year. I think that was a Fitzpatrick game. So Tua against the Pats twice in week 15 of last year and week 1 of this year. The number one thing that stands out about him is that he is a really, really quick decision maker, right? He's really, really fast, especially on those run pass option concepts or the quick game throws to the outside, at just reading the numbers, right? Reading the numbers game in the box and just deciding, is this a run play or is this a pass play, right? He makes that decision really well and really quickly. So you got to give him credit there. But what can the Patriots do better? What can they do differently? Because they gave up way too much space underneath and they got gashed on yards after the catch on those quick throws.
Yeah, it's, you'd like to think it's as easy as maybe it's where they missed Steph Gilmore, because Gilmore's going to come up, jam that wide receiver at the line, not let him get off quick enough and upset the timing of that play. That's what they couldn't do. Devontae Parker, there's one slant route, like quick slant, he took for 15 yards. They just couldn't disrupt those quick routes enough at the line of scrimmage. That's what they were missing. It's what they've been so good at for the last few years. I don't know why they didn't press more, do more press man with J.C. Jackson. It might have just been a week 1 thing, but even if they did that, you still have on the other side. So that's going to be an issue to watch moving forward.
So that's the question, right? Is I wrote down this dreaded phrase that nobody wants to hear in New England, because we used to watch it with Matt Patricia as the play caller for the defense. Bend, don't break, right? And I say that, right, and I cringe coming out of my mouth with it. But when you have a secondary that's down their number 1 corner, and you're going up against some pretty good skill players in Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker, you can understand to a degree the game plan of sagging off a little bit, giving up the 10-yard completion underneath instead of the 50-yard bomb for a touchdown, right? You can sort of understand that. The problem is that based off the type of quarterback that Tua to me is a lot more dangerous when you give him those types of quick read throws, right? When you force him to hold the football and try to push it down the field, I'm not as scared of him, but he is a very good quick game passer, and that's how they got beat. So how do you fix it? Now, the obvious answer, and I asked Gerard Mayo this, I asked Mike Pellegrino it today, and Gerard Mayo said what everybody continues to tell me in the Patriots locker room about RPOs. Run players are run players and pass players are pass players, right? Basically saying the guys in the box worry about stopping the run, the guys in the secondary worry about defending the pass. The problem is when you go with that philosophy, and the RPO action is holding those linebackers in the middle of the field and having them step up to play the run, those underneath zone droppers aren't coming, right? So when they hit that slant, there's nobody dropping underneath it because that linebacker is creeping up into the hole. And then when they throw the ball out there on one of those quick throws, those linebackers, Dante Hightower, Jawan Bentley, they're not sideline to sideline backers, right? So you have a receiver breaking inside the formation, and then you have Dante Hightower and Jawan Bentley at 260 pounds trying to come in from the inside to help out and make that tackle, right? And that's the speed in the box for the Patriots is a limitation that we've known about for a long time at the linebacker position. And that would be the one potential fatal flaw that I would worry about against these types of schemes is they just might not have the sideline to sideline speed, especially on first down when they're going to put those big backers out there to be able to close those gaps, right? Because if you're a corner and you're sitting outside of it and you're outside leveraged against a slant and there's nobody coming into the middle of the field to close it down and help you make that tackle, then you're toast. And that's what we saw a couple of times.
Yeah, and they've never been a big speed team. It almost feels like, the quote you gave, right? Run players are run players, pass players are pass players.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they're just content to get beat by the RPO. They figure you can't run it every down. Teams will pick their spots. It is what it is. You do your best to stop it. As long as they're stopping everything else, they can live with the RPO. It's not the best approach, but it almost kind of feel like that's where they're at with it? That it's just a nuisance they have to live with?
So the other strategy that you can go with, and this is what college teams do, right? Because college teams get RPO'd 15 times a week, right? So they have to come up with a better strategy. Miami ran 10 pass plays off RPOs. I don't have the number of run plays, but let's say it was 15 total, maybe. It feels like, right? Based off of how many times they ran it on Sunday. So that's a pretty high volume. And that's why it really stood out as a problem. And some of those plays weren't RPOs. Some of those plays were just what are called check with me's, right? Where if the corner is playing off of him at the line of scrimmage, it's a run play the whole way in the huddle, right? They call, run play in the huddle. But if the corner's got 7 yards of cushion, Tua has that option to just pop up and throw it, right? It's not an RPO. It's just on Tua to make that decision. So those types of plays you kind of have to live with, right? You kind of come up and make that tackle. RPO schemes in particular, the only other thing that you can do, and this is what college teams do, is play the pass, right? And what I mean by that is accept the fact that against the run, you're going to be down a man, right? You're going to be 4-on-5 against the run. Rely on your front four to stop the run on its own and get those linebackers off in coverage, right? And try to get underneath those slants and those in breakers that way. And if your front four gets beat up front, then those linebackers, they're probably already at depth 7-8 yards off the line of scrimmage. You come up, you tackle them for a gain of 6, and you live to play another down instead of giving up the gain of 14.
Right. So the only issue with that, I don't know how well that translates to the NFL just because the hashes are so much wider in college, right? So if you're running that to the short side, the linebacker can be in position to play the pass. Like, think about where the hash is, right? Even if the linebacker goes into that flat to play the slant, he's still much closer to the line of scrimmage in college than he is in the NFL. He needs to get much further out from where the ball was snapped to cover it in the NFL. So maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but it just feels like that strategy isn't as effective in the NFL.
I don't necessarily disagree that it's not a perfect strategy because these plays inherently, right, are putting you in conflict. Like that's why they're so successful, is because the linebackers are either they have run responsibilities and they have pass responsibilities, and you can't be both places at the same time. Otherwise you're nowhere, right? So you kind of have to commit somewhere. You can't just be hanging out in no man's land. So that's the problem with it. It's a challenge to defend these plays. There's no doubt about it. But in the college game, they just say we're willing to give up 6 yards per carry. We just don't care, right? We're willing to give up 5-6 yards per carry. As long as they don't break off a big one on us, we're perfectly fine with it. Bill Belichick's philosophy is old school. I think it would drive him nuts to give up 5 yards, 6 yards per carry. Not that they're going to give up that much, but let's say it's even 4.5, right? I think that would drive him absolutely up a wall. So I don't think that they're going to play that strategy. But if they get RPO'd and they're going to play some teams down the stretch here, and even in the playoffs, if they play a team like Kansas City who runs tons of RPOs, or Buffalo in the division, will definitely take note of the RPO struggles the Patriots had against Miami because they have their own RPO package as well. Those teams are going to continue to just RPO the Patriots to death. And the best way to, I think, to defend it is to give up the run, right? And you have these big guys up front. You put Judon, Guy, Godshaw, and Dietrich Wise, or maybe you put a Dante Hightower or somebody like that, another big linebacker. Put those 4 guys up in the box, have you play 4-on-5 against the run action, hope you hold up enough, and get those linebackers out of there, right? Get them out of there and get them underneath those routes. That's to me the only solution that I see, other than just praying that you play good coverage on the outside with Joe Williams and Jalen Mills. And I don't know. Until they get Gilmore back, I don't know if that's necessarily a viable strategy either, to just think that those guys are going to be able to survive and press man against Jalen Waddle the entire game or Devontae Parker the entire game.
I mean, like, little side tangent here. Jalen Waddle can play. That guy's the real deal. That guy, he was probably the most impressive rookie of any on the field. The Dolphins have something there.
Yeah, he's a big time game changer, and you also understand. Look, when you go up against a guy with 4.2 speed like Jalen Waddle, pressing him sounds better in theory than it ends up actually being. Right? Like it's really difficult to get up there and somebody that fast, unless you know that you have safety help over the top all the time, to get up in somebody's face and play press man against Jalen Waddle running a 4.24 down this field. That's easier said than done. Right. I mean, a lot of the time, I've talked to a few former cornerbacks in the league, guys like Eric Crocker and stuff like that, who do great film breakdown stuff on Twitter. And I was talking about defending Tyreek Hill at the time, but Jalen Waddle kind of fits in the same category as Tyreek Hill, honestly. And Crocker said, it's really easy to just say to a corner, in theory, just go up and press him, right? Just go up and hold him up at the line of scrimmage. He was like, if I'm out there against Tyreek Hill, I am getting the heck out of there, right? Like I'm getting on my horse immediately, because it's so hard to just square a guy like that up and just throw a jam and hope that you survive. It's just a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, hopefully soon the Patriots can get, because that's kind of the one dynamic they're missing from their offense. Hopefully they get that guy soon, another draft or two.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to talk about the Jets for the last couple of minutes here? Do you want to take some questions?
Let's take some questions. This was supposed to be a Q&A show. And, we've gotten away from that for a little bit, and I want to get back to it. So we can do, I guess, a quick Jets thought while people get their questions in.
Sure. So
makes sense.
If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat right now. For the next 10 minutes, Alex and I will wrap up the show answering your questions. Quick take on the Jets. First and foremost, looking at the Patriots offense, just early preview against the Jets defense. If the Patriots are going to be able to open it up at all this year and create some explosive plays down the field, they better be able to do it against the Jets, right? This secondary is not very good. They have a bunch of players hurt on top of the fact that they're not a very talented secondary to begin with. So if they're going to create some big plays, right, some plays to Nelson Aguilar down the field, to the tight ends down the seams, things like that, it should definitely come against this Jets team.
And I'll go on the other side of the ball. We spent a ton of this past week talking about, what is Brian Flores going to do to Mac Jones? And he's going to have something special for rookie quarterback, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of annoying to talk about because it didn't end up coming true, but it felt like it was going to come true. Now we get to go the other way around. Now Bill Belichick gets to put Zach Wilson in a blender. And that's going to be fun because I don't think Zach Wilson's going to be able to handle it. He's going to see ghosts. So I'm looking forward to that. I
think so as well, to a degree. But the one thing, and I'm doing this to not be a total homer, right? The one thing that you see with Zach Wilson based off that week 1 game is he does have that out of pocket creation ability, right? The ability to scramble and then throw on the run. He's very good out of structure in that sense. So if I'm Zach Wilson and I see Bill Belichick stacking the line of scrimmage and bringing pressure, I am just getting the hell out of Dodge. Right? Like I'm just not even going to stand there in the pocket. I'm just going to get the heck out of here. So I think that to me is the one advantage that he might possibly have.
So if you're good there's a really interesting question there about the running game and Cam Newton's impact.
Yes. This is a really good question. I'm glad someone asked this. Yes. Let's pull this up.
So I would be curious to know, I'm just going to answer your question with a question. I apologize for that. But we talked about Sony Michel and what he would add in terms of depth behind Damian Harris and kind of keeping some of the workload off Harris's plate. Who do you think they knew that they were going to cut Cam Newton when they made the Sony Michel trade?
I don't know.
Do you think they knew yet?
That's a good question.
Because I can't help but wonder if they thought, what, we have Cam, he's going to run the ball. We have him to kind of balance it. When was the Sony Michel trade? Was it before the Giants game?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah. So it was, I think it was that Wednesday. I think it was the day. Yeah, it was the morning before Mac had that monster practice, the first of those 2 joint practices.
Yeah.
So It's very possible they made that trade thinking as though Cam Newton would be the starter, which is interesting. This is a great question. This is a great point.
So I do think the second part of this point is something that we really need to discuss, because I almost brought it up today, and I was planning on bringing it up on Thursday, actually, so I'm glad we got to it early. The threat of Cam Newton in the backfield in the numbers game. We talked about this so much last year, right? That Cam Newton essentially allows you to be +1 in the box all the time because of his threat as a runner. And being a good smash mouth, downhill, productive rushing offense with an immobile, a quarterback that's not Cam Newton. I don't want to get into this if Mac is mobile or not. I don't want people yelling at us.
He's not Cam Newton in terms of mobility.
Right. Without the running threat, you have to be a dominant run blocking team to be a really good rushing offense with a non-mobile QB, right? It just doesn't happen all that much anymore. San Francisco a couple of years ago was there, right? Because they had a really good scheme and they had a really good offensive line, and that team was able to run the football despite Jimmy G not being a mobile quarterback. But most of the time, when you look at the history of the NFL in the last decade, right? Most of the time, the teams that are towards the top of the league in rushing are Baltimore now with Lamar, the Cowboys with Dak, right? Good teams that have a threat at the quarterback position to run the ball. So no, I do not think that this rushing attack has the ability, or I guess maybe the better way to say it is the ceiling that it did last year, right? It's just not going to be as good as it was last year. Now, the passing game stuff should make up for that, but I don't think that this rushing attack is going to be as good as what we saw last year.
Would you consider, would you put Tannehill in that category? Because they generally lead the league. I know that they have Derrick Henry, but
they're another team that does it, but they also do it with probably the best back in the NFL.
So doesn't it feel like that kind of has to be the model? And again, I love Damian Harris. He's not Derrick Henry. Nobody in the league is Derrick Henry, but that feels like the model, right?
Yeah. I would say, and they have a great offensive line too down there in Tennessee. So you better have a really good offensive line.
Which the Patriots do.
A back to handle it, which maybe the Patriots do in Damian Harris, but he's not Derrick Henry, right? But overall, the point that I'm making, the ceiling of this rushing offense is not going to be at the caliber that it was last year, because you're playing one short in the box and you don't have that mobile quarterback anymore.
Right. What else? All right. What else we got for questions here?
All right, here we go.
We just ran with a bunch of similar stuff.
There was one other question. I'm trying to find it right here. Of course, now everybody's yelling at us about our take about the offensive, about needing a mobile quarterback to be able to run the football. Is Taylor the only one that thinks that Tua looked good in that game? He might be.
Yep. He didn't look horrible, but Mac Jones was
here's the quarterback. Yeah, right? The way that Tua, I mentioned it earlier, the quick game stuff, Tua was great, right? And you got the football out of your hands quickly, and he makes good decisions. He understands the numbers and how to count it up and whether it's a better run play or pass play based off the look. He's really good in those quick game type of situations, but drop back passing, that I was not impressed. And there was one play in particular where he had Jalen Waddle on a deep post route, and they had it was like post over, right? And the Patriots run that a lot too, and he took the dig route to Devontae Parker instead of throwing the post, even though Devin McCourty jumped the dig route and left the post one-on-one with Jalen Mills against Jalen Waddle. And he didn't throw the deep post. And I don't know if he thinks he can get it there, honestly. Like, I don't know if he thinks that he has the arm strength to get it there.
I still think the hip, I think that his whole career, that hip is going to be a question.
Okay.
In terms of what it means for his throw power.
Yeah. Robert here asking if we think that Matt Patricia, because at times on Sunday, no doubt, it looked like a little Patricia-esque with the sagging off the receivers and the bend don't break stuff. I still don't think it was full Patricia, but there was a little bit.
They didn't drop Lawrence Guy into zone. Yeah. So, how many times did Matt Patricia put on third down, put like 3rd and 15, just put Trey Flowers into a shallow zone where he couldn't do anything? God, that was infuriating. So, we didn't see that. No, there's some Patricia fingerprints there. I think whether it's for better or for worse, I'd be shocked if there weren't, right? He's here for a reason. But yeah, I don't know that it's totally up to him. I think it's still mostly Steve and Gerard Mayo and of course Bill. But yeah, there's fingerprints there for sure.
Yeah, I a little bit, but I don't think that there was a whole lot of Matt Patricia element to that game plan, especially the way they still got after the quarterback in those drop back situations. I don't know. And as you mentioned, like we didn't see Devon Godshaw dropping off the line of scrimmage into coverage or anything
That's
ridiculous
peak.
like that.
Once you start seeing your like key pass rushers dropping into shallow zones and or manning up on running backs on key third downs, that's when you've hit peak Matt Patricia.
Yeah, we're not 100% there, which is good. Which is very good, right? I mean, we don't want to be 100% there by any means.
All right, want to answer this Quinn Nordin question because it's a good one.
All right, there we go. All right, let's end it on this one, Alex. Take the stage.
Yeah. You put it on the bottom.
I tried.
Is it coming? What's going on here? There we go.
It's a little salty sometimes.
It's interesting with Nordin because so they can elevate Folk twice.
Right. And so somebody threw this out there the other day, and you have to bring it up. They could Ross Ventrone Folk, right? Where they bring him up and sign him to the 53 for the game, and then cut him right after the game and then sign him to the practice squad, and then bring him back up for the game. And they did that with Ross Ventrone, like 5 or 6 times or whatever it was one year.
Well, no, Ross Ventrone, they just kept cutting and releasing. They
right.
Signed him on Wednesday, cut him on Thursday, signed him on Friday, cut him on Saturday.
Exactly.
So not quite like it's in. So what they really, so they can elevate Folk twice. That's when the decision comes in.
Yes.
And, even if you do want to bounce Folk back and forth, like you just said, which I guess you could do, but at a certain point, somebody's going to sign him.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to sign him just to piss you off.
Especially if he keeps kicking well like he did on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure, he says he likes it in New England. I'm not saying he's lying, but he lives in Dallas in the offseason. His family's still in Dallas. Greg Zuerlein, I know he hit the game-winning kick. He didn't look great. Dallas threw some money at him. I think he'd go.
Yeah.
I don't think, you're guaranteed to keep him. So we'll see. But again, so even if you do want to go that route where you're cutting, signing, are they going to keep Quinn Nordin on the roster for the whole year and not use him?
Right.
It's so on them. It's so everybody who's on the 53 is on the 53 for a purpose. So it's, is the purpose just to redshirt him and make sure he can't get claimed? I guess. But that's really not helping you win football games this year. And I've been the one preaching the 4-year window. So I guess that kind of rolls into what I've been saying. But it would just, that's an extreme example of looking at the 4-year windows. I don't know what they're going to do. It's really interesting to see. I almost feel like in a game against the Jets that you should win easily, that's less consequential. Let Nordin kick and see. Because one of two things is going to happen. Either he's good, and boom, you have your kicker, you're set. Or he sucks, and then you can probably get him to the practice squad if he goes 0-3.
Right.
So I almost feel like they got to give Nordin a shot this week.
Yeah.
I don't know that they will, but I feel like they should.
It's not a bad opportunity, right? When you're going up against a rookie quarterback and Zach Wilson, who looked a little bit shaky against the Carolina defense. It has a good front, but not a Bill Belichick coach defense, right? You should feel like you have a pretty distinct advantage there. And you also have a really distinct advantage with the running games, right? The Patriots can hand the ball off and run the ball 30 times on the Jets. I don't think the Jets can do that against the Patriots, right? So they should win this game pretty easily, especially if they play as like they did on the whole against Miami, and they repeat that against the Jets. That should be a very winnable formula against New York. I wouldn't mind seeing Quinn Nordin kick in this game. I do also wonder, there are some back, fine print type of rules about injured reserve. Is there a chance that maybe they could say, oh, Nordin got hurt in practice, know what I mean? And get him to IR at some point. Maybe that's part of the plan, but then he can't practice, right? So there's yin and yangs to that as well. But like you said, eventually they're going to have to make a decision here between these two kickers. And it's clear that they trust Folk on game day a whole lot more than Quinn Nordin. Yeah. So my guess is that if maybe they try to get away with it for an extra week and not elevate Folk the second time until the Saints game or the Bucks game or something like that. But eventually that second elevation is coming. So you're going to have to do that soon. Can we take one last question? Because I meant to.
Winovich?
No.
Okay.
I want to answer this question. Big GM, MGM coming in with some good questions here. We appreciate it. Dante Hightower definitely did not look like himself in that game on Sunday. The space plays don't concern me as much, right? He's never been a guy that you want dropping into coverage, right? I mean, that's just not his game. But there were a couple of times in the trenches where he got cut down on one play in the hole. He was very blockable on Sunday, which is not normally what we see out of Dante Hightower. Potentially injury related. I don't know. I'm not ready to say he's washed by any means, but definitely not the Dante Hightower we were expecting on Sunday.
Yeah, I think he was hurt. There's that clip of him limping late in the game. Let's see what the injury report looks like on Wednesday, and then go from there with him. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to, I don't want to jump to any conclusions because I don't think we have the full story right now.
Yeah, here, let me pull it up real quick. I am wondering how much did he play in this game, and maybe if in the future they'll have the ability to play him less, and kind of maximize his snaps a little bit more. That I think it might be a good possibility. He played 42 snaps, 78% of the snaps on Sunday. So that's a good amount. Yeah, big amount for a guy that in his first game back. So maybe the answer there with Dante Hightower is to give some of his reps to a guy like Josh Uche, right? And let Uche play some of those snaps off the line of scrimmage, or maybe you play some dime or nickel looks with Hightower out of there from off the line of scrimmage too, and put Adrian Phillips or Kyle Duggar or somebody like that in the box instead of Hightower. That I think could be an answer, because he might be best used at this point of his career, and maybe we're overthinking it, or I'm overthinking it and overreacting, but he might be better used in this point of his career as a super sub, right? As somebody that comes in certain packages, plays 25, 30 snaps a game, and is just great for those 25 snaps.
I think Jerron Mayo did that at the end of his career, didn't he?
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's totally a role that could make sense for him. I think, and if he's hurt, even more so. You just, you want to make sure that he's fresh for the biggest games of the year.
Yeah. All right, that wraps it up for today. We're going to be back on the show on Thursday afternoon to break down the matchup against the New York Jets on Sunday. So Patriots-Jets preview on Thursday. Then we will be back on the show next week. We might try to do Mondays for the post-game recap show. We're going to try to push it out on Monday if we can. If not, we'll be back on around the same time, 4 o'clock on Tuesday as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, Patriots Press Pass.